let me give an introduction to the regulatory landscape in India on e-commerce. We all know e-commerce is booming in India. There are a lot of stats. If you just Google, you will find that the e-commerce companies, especially companies like Flipkart, Amazon India, Snapdeal, they are doubling the revenue every year, or even less than a year. They are increasing their valuation by a few $1 billion every year. What we are seeing is the growth potential of e-commerce companies in India is tremendous. We also see there is a lot of activity in acquiring companies in India by these three companies. Each one of them has kind of told that they will be acquiring at least a dozen companies each every year. That has fueled growth in other e-commerce companies because at some point of time they see that, look, if you have a very good payment systems or if you have very good mobile application system or a good technology, good content, a good distribution model, then we will get acquired by one of these companies. It will give us an exit, and that will pile up to this company becoming one more bigger company and better company, and e-commerce growing bigger and better. So what we have been seeing is e-commerce is actually growing, and there are real growths, and there are certain statistics. If you want, we can talk about. But what I will talk about today is what is behind, what are the regulation behind the growth. What this company, if you are looking at being one of those companies which is doing e-commerce in India, or one of those companies which support doing e-commerce in India, then what regulations do we need to keep in mind? That is what we have been discussing today, the whole session till 5 o'clock, and I'll just give a glimpse of some of those things which we will deal with at a later point in time. We have this book in front of you where we have dealt with most of the issues, but if you basically see in terms of various aspects, right from let's say foreign investment into e-commerce companies, there are challenges. You need to do it. You need to do it right if you want to become successful, you want to have a shot at being successful. There are challenges and regulations in mobile payment systems. Again, right from a situation like company like Uber, which faced problem on payment systems or on licensing, on regulations. Today you may have known that Uber and Ola, their website has been blocked in the state of Delhi because they don't comply with the regulation of that particular city-state. And those kind of issues will become critical. Other industry issues like in healthcare, there are a lot of e-commerce applications coming on healthcare side. For example, people are connecting patients to doctors. They are connecting prescriptions, making medicine available online, so connecting patients to drugstores. And a lot of issues come up saying that, is it something which is legally permitted? What are the regulatory challenges in order for someone to do it? There are issues with respect to content, because for any e-commerce, you look at content, you will find a lot of issues which comes to intellectual property, copyright, issues with respect to defamation, liability, and all those issues we'll be dealing in detail a little while later. Same thing, you look at data protection issues and security issues, which is becoming very critical for IoT applications, cloud applications, and that is what we will also be discussing while later in the session. Let me touch upon the way e-commerce industry works in India, and let me touch upon the FDI issues in this particular industry. Fundamentally, when you do a foreign investment coming in an e-commerce company in India, there are Indian laws which says that, look, if you are a B2C company, then foreign investment is not permitted, it's prohibited. Now, the first question comes is, what is B2C company? Because I'm dealing with a consumer. Am I a B2C company? If I am broadcasting movie. Am I a B2C company? Because the end user is an individual customer. I am providing, local search services. Am I B2C company? Yes, I am a B2C company in traditional sense, but that is not what B2C is defined under Indian laws. While there is no definition of B2C under Indian laws, what we have seen, the way Indian regulators look at B2C is someone who is doing retail trade in the goods using website or electronic means. So if you are in a services business, you are generally fine, you are not covered, and foreign investment is permitted. If you are into, let's say, broadcasting and webcasting business, you are not covered by B2C restriction directly, but then there are other regulations which includes, whether you are an internet TV or not, because that leads into a very different, FDI regime, foreign direct investment regime. So that's something you need to take a look at it on a separate plate. But if you are in a business of selling goods, either directly or indirectly, then you are covered under the restriction. Now, if that's the situation, right, how is Amazon doing business in India, or how is Flipkart and Snapdeal doing business in India, or for that matter, companies like Pepperfry, LimeRoad, or various other e-commerce companies which are there in India. We have seen different models, and I'll just touch upon some of the models. This is one of the initial model which is there on the website, which basically was used as a start, where you split the whole activity into two different parts. One, you make it as a wholesale cash and carry business, which is a company which takes or sources the goods and sell it to someone who in further retails it out to other consumers. Wholesale cash and carry, B2B, is permitted under Indian law. 100% investment is permitted without any restriction. And as a result, this is something which you can do. Those companies also said, look, we will own the domain name, develop the technology or website technology, and licensing out to a company which actually retails. So you have a wholesale company and a tech company, and then you have a B2C company, and your B2C company then gets license of technology, takes goods from the wholesale company, and then sells it to customer. The B2C company is owned generally by, it's always owned by an Indian people, but on arm's length basis, this transaction done on arm's length basis. So this is typically how it started. That's how most of the earlier e-commerce industry or e-commerce business been structured. This ran into problems. This ran into a problem not because the structure was incorrect, but it ran into a problem because there were no independent transaction. They were not on arm's length basis, and also there were issues with respect to, or questions with respect to saying that, if one company is doing wholesale cash and carry and it's also developing technology and licensed technology, really what is the business of that company? And whether the wholesale cash and carry and the technology is an activity, but the business is just is a retail business, and whether that's has a restriction on foreign investment to India. So those kind of questions were raised. As a result, we saw modification, evolvement of this particular model. Today, most of these companies would have some variation of this model, not exactly this model, but some variation of this model or the same model by which they would be doing business in India. Today, you have a company which is called, you most likely will have some holding company, because you need to give ESOPs in that company, you need foreign investment coming in that company, so you will typically have one holdco sitting on top, and that company will set up 3 businesses where foreign investment is absolutely permitted without any restriction. These 3 businesses are: one, wholesale cash and carry business. There is very clear permission of getting 100% investment. Then there is a marketplace. Now, marketplace company, there was a lot of question at some point of time whether a foreign investment is permitted in marketplace or not. But Foreign investment marketplace was always permitted. In 1999, we had a company called Bazi, which had foreign investment and had obtained government approval, and government had approved foreign investment in that particular company. Since then, marketplace always had foreign investment approval. So there is no question mark on whether any restriction on foreign investment permission. Second is logistic company. Third is logistic company. And these are the three companies where, since you can have an FDI, you would do it on your own. However, company where you can't do an FDI, which is the retailing company, the company which actually sells it to the consumer, is still owned by an Indian entity. Sometimes it's a known factor, some business associate or some logistic company which you have commercial relationships. Sometimes it will be more than one company. It is not the only company. So various variations are there. Only 2 or 3 things are standard. It cannot have same employees, same ownership, same directors. It cannot be controlling or associate company of each other. That is something which will violate the Indian law. But as long as it is done on arm's length basis, then that's something which we have found the government to be okay with. What is another important aspect here is how do you clearly define what activity is done by which entity so that you don't end up violating law. And secondly, how does the payment distributed? For example, who does advertisement? Who does advertising? Which entity does advertising, right? Which entity does sales and promotion? And this can be two different. So brand building can be done by a B2B company or a marketplace company, but the sales promotion can be done by B2C company. So those kind of nuances you need to go into and figuring out what is the right model which works for you, which works with the way the money, which company has how much amount of money and how they want to spend it, and make sure that you are still in compliance with all the regulatory requirement. Marketplace by definition means that it will have more than one customer, and while you see typically that there is one entity which is a preferred customer, preferred vendor when they are selling on the marketplace, which means maybe more than 50, 60, 70% is actually sold by one company, but you'll always find, and this is what is expected from regulators also, that there are multiple people who are selling on a marketplace, because if you don't have multiple people selling on a marketplace, then there'll be question mark on whether it's a marketplace or not. So that's the way the regulatory regime is. There are additional points. For example, you can have a payment gateway company, or you can contact with the payment gateway separately, and how does the money flow will become very critical, and so on and so forth. So I just thought I will give a little bit background on how the e-commerce company is structured, and with this, over to you, Nishit bhai.
Thank you, Vaiba.